Thank you, Patrick. Morning, everybody. The organisation I work with is called the Sustainable Energy Authority of Ireland. We work for the Department of Energy, and our remit is to promote and assist the development of sustainable energy in Ireland. So what does that include? Energy efficiency. We provide a lot of grants through a number of schemes that we have for domestic and industrial energy efficiency projects, be it insulate your house, upgrade your boiler. We do a lot of work on energy management, so that's kind of quality approaches to how you actually understand your energy usage. And we also do a lot of work around renewable energy, or what's probably more commonly known now as low carbon technologies, and that's really the area I'm very much involved in these days. So what I'm going to talk about, I spend a lot of time in Europe. I represent Ireland on a number of European energy research programs, so I shall try my best to explain those in simple terms. I'll talk about the Irish energy research landscape, who's who, where the research strengths are, and where we're really pointed as regards strategy. And I'll point at some opportunities for collaboration between different countries, and very much from a European perspective, the idea of SMEs being involved in research and commercialization of energy technologies is very strong in Europe, and you will see that through a number of the programs that I'm going to talk about. So, from the EU perspective, this program I think is funded through a thing called Interreg. I spend a lot of time with another program called the 7th Framework Program. You may have heard of things like the SET Plan, Intelligent Energy Europe, and the list goes on. And certainly when I was sent to Europe to spend some time with these, I scratched my head for a long time to try and figure out how they were connected, which parts of the EU Commission control them, provided budgets, how do you influence the programs. So I made a very simple diagram, or at least that's how it started out. And this is as simple as I could make it, I promise. And I'm just going to, don't worry too much about the details. I know the text is a bit small, but I'm going to show you a few little pieces of this to try and explain how energy research policy in Europe is being driven. Across the top, I just have put in the different director DGs, they're called in Europe. And to me, I thought it would be DG Energy does everything, but obviously research, DG Research provide a lot of funding. And then you have DG Environment, and there's climate change, and there's innovation, and various different things. So the point is, although this looks complicated, it does give energy a distinct advantage in that everybody's clamoring to provide money to solve the energy problem and to really advance research in energy technologies. Europe needs to get ahead of the United States, of China, and really catch up, I suppose, in terms of energy research. So there's a lot of strategic technologies that have been picked out, and I'm going to talk about those. So just to zoom in on this 7th Framework Programme, FP7 as it's now known, 53 billion euros. It's not all for energy, but it is quite a significant sum. It's over a 7-year period, and the next period it'll have, I think, 80 billion, and it will be called, imaginatively, not FP8, they will call it Horizon 2020. Somebody had a competition, they come up with a name, it'll be called something else. So the point here is the FP7 piece is 2.3 billion over this period. So every year there's a call for about 220, 230 million euros for collaborative research projects, be they in pure research through to demonstration projects. It's about a 50-50 split. And on the right-hand side of this, you'll see there's these things are materials, ICT, environment, infrastructures. These all provide funding. If you look in their work programs every year, there's a huge number of energy-related projects. So if I list all of the calls, the 30 or so opportunities here, there's another 40 across these. So, for instance, the ICT industry are interested in smart grid, and the technologies that are used there are transferable. So there's many opportunities. I often get asked about public-private partnerships. You may have heard of these as well. Just to try and demystify, they come a little bit from the energy program, but mostly they fall in under these other programs. And they're looking at technologies for energy efficient buildings, a thing called Green Car, which is around transport, and factories of the future, manufacturing. So that's the 7 framework program. Now, the energy piece is driven. I mentioned strategic technologies, and there's a thing called a set plan, which is strategic energy technologies. And Europe, a couple of years ago, identified 6 technologies. And very importantly, they're wind, bioenergy, or biofuels significantly, solar, be it concentrated solar power or photovoltaics. There's a typo on there. Carbon capture and storage, or sequestration, is another key technology. Nuclear, fission and fusion, and electricity grids. And on the tail of it, then you're seeing things like fuel cells and hydrogen, which already get a lot of funding, about 100 million a year, and smart cities. So the idea of combining intelligent systems with energy systems in the real world is something that's obviously a big challenge. It can all work very well on paper, but to actually put different energy use profiles together, you need some intelligence to make that work. So they're the key strategic energy technologies for Europe. And each of those has a group of industry called European Industrial Initiatives. There's tons of acronyms. I suppose that's why this diagram is at least useful. The industrial initiatives are made up, for instance, in the wind category, they'll be made up of the Vestas and the Siemens, the big wind turbine manufacturers. And they have defined for their technology what needs to be done in the next 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, be it research, development, or even demonstration projects that need to happen. And it may be things like improve understanding of the resource or get public acceptance to move ahead, and various different things. So each will have a roadmap. Now, just to make it more complicated, there's another thing called a research alliance, which is an alliance of universities, and they have their own list of technologies, which are slightly the same but slightly different. You find this a lot, that things are starting to merge now, but the terminologies are a little bit different. So I suppose Europe are trying to pull these together. These work very closely together now, but they didn't do that initially. They would both have their own roadmaps of where things need to go. And only now are they starting to pull these together. So that's starting to happen. Just as briefly on the set plan, I talked about roadmaps. Each of the technologies will have, specific objectives that need to be achieved. The point of this is most European research funding programs now point towards this. They will say, if we're going to fund a project in carbon capture and storage, well, they're looking for 12 demonstration plants by 2016. We better fund things that make this happen. So if you look at an FP7 program, it will specifically point to European industrial initiatives and the roadmaps. So that's enough about that. I don't overcomplicate it. So just to go back to my diagram for a brief moment, this area here, Intelligent Energy Europe, is this is a slightly different type of program, which may be merged in future with others, but it looks at things like behavior aspects, implementation, it looks at the barriers to deployment of technologies, and it kind of deals more with the softer measures, but it's more short term. It looks at things that need to happen fairly quickly. So that's a different opportunity. There's about 100 million of a fund in there as well every year, so that's another opportunity. And other things on this, NER 300, which is very much pre-commercial scale demonstration of very large utility scale technologies. There's a thing called the Joint Research Centre, which I'm visiting next week to find out what they do, because I don't really know. There's a thing called ESFRI, which is building research infrastructures for things like solar energy, European scale infrastructures, where researchers can go and use the facilities to actually do testing. The idea being that ESFRI provides research infrastructures that a normal country couldn't do on their own. They would need to combine. All of these projects, all the European programs require collaborative research. They very specifically point towards SMEs. There's a thing called Innovation Union. There's a document worth having a look at for the SMEs to see where Europe are focusing. But very much it's about commercialization of technologies and bringing the jobs to Europe, and you'll see that written everywhere. Okay, so that's a whistle-stop tour of Europe. There's quite a lot we could talk all day about that. In terms of what Ireland does for energy research, about 2 years ago I got into this space. And my first task was to go and visit some of the guys in UCD and find out what they do. Quickly realised that there's a lot of different research strengths in Ireland, and nobody actually knew who they all were. There wasn't one kind of person who could tell you everything. Different people would point you to different universities. So we spent quite a bit of time. We went to the universities, we asked, what energy research projects have you done in the past 5 or 6 years? And we got back a list of about 700 projects, listed with 250 principal investigators, 180 million worth of funding. We found there's a lot of collaboration with industry and with SMEs already that exist, and we're trying to highlight that. We had to come up with our own categorization, and we tried to mirror a lot of what Europe does. So I think of these 13 technologies, things that jump out here that aren't on the other list would be marine energy, for instance. Energy policy doesn't really appear directly in some of the European stuff, although it's funded elsewhere. To overlay the set plan, which I mentioned earlier, technologies, there's a good overlap there as well. But to kind of look at all the data and see where the strengths are in Ireland and where the academic community are focusing their efforts, energy efficiency comes up as obviously the biggest one, which we were happy with. For us, energy efficiency first. You save the energy, then you worry about the generation of efficient energy supply. But bioenergy has a lot of interest in Ireland. Solar through Don's group here. In the past few years, there's been a lot of work on marine energy. Ireland are looking to deploy marine renewables, offshore, wave and tidal devices. And there's a lot of work happening there. Wind is low, although we have probably the highest wind penetration in the world. I mean, there was a day just last week where we had 45% of Ireland's energy use was supplied by wind energy. And that's unprecedented in the world. I think the issue there, of course, is if the wind blows and you don't need energy, then what do you do? And storage is an expensive technology. So we've spent a lot of time working on electrical grid. Because we're an island, we have variable renewable supply, and we have everybody has variable demand. So to try and match those two, electrical grid, smart grid, there's a huge amount of work there. And things like carbon capture and storage will be small. We don't have a huge number of coal-fired power plants, just one. So that's of lower priority for us. So we have set up a website. You can access it. You can see all the universities. You can see these technologies and pick by technology who the researchers are, what the European programs are, and what the current FP7 opportunities, for instance, are. They're all on that website. It's research.scai.ie. And we have lists of who the PIs are and what their expertise is across all the universities. I'm very fond of this very quick section on EU projects, previous projects we've done, marine energy projects, bioenergy, electrical grid, various different policy type studies. So we've about 25 or so successful FP7 projects to date, and I know of a number that are looking to apply for this year. And finally, the opportunities for this year are all provided on that website, and we'll give out the presentation, but under each of the technologies, there'll be a list of specific projects that the EU are looking for collaborative efforts, and they cover every one of those topics, really. Again, you don't need to read all those. So thank you very much.